The neon sign outside the dusty spur had been flickering for 3 years. Nobody had bothered to fix it. The Essen spur blinked on and off like a dying pulse, casting an unsteady red glow over the cracked asphalt of Route 9. Just outside Clanton, Texas, a town so small it didn't even make it onto most GPS maps anymore. Population 2,400, give or take whoever had packed up and left since the last census. It was a Thursday night in late October, and the air outside carried that particular bite that only the Texas Panhandle could produce: dry, sharp, laced with the smell of red dirt, and something faintly sweet from the pecan orchards 2 miles east. The kind of cold that didn't ask permission before crawling under your collar. Inside, the bar was warm in the way old places get warm, not from good heating, but from years of accumulated life soaked into the walls. The wood paneling had darkened to the color of old whiskey. The floor was scuffed so many times that the original linoleum pattern had become a mystery. Above the bar, a mounted longhorn skull stared down at the room with the patient indifference of something that had seen everything and judged nothing. It was about half full tonight. A dozen or so people scattered across mismatched tables and bar stools, most of them men, most of them with the kind of weathered faces that come not from age alone but from decades of outdoor work and quiet worry. Country music played low from a speaker above the pool table. Merle Haggard, then Alan Jackson, then someone newer that nobody seemed to recognize. Patty Colwell moved between tables with the practiced efficiency of a woman who had been doing this for 17 years. She was 43, with auburn hair pulled back in a loose ponytail and the kind of eyes that smiled even when her mouth didn't. Her sneakers had a hole near the left pinky toe that she'd been meaning to replace for 2 months. She carried 4 drinks on a tray without spilling a drop, set them down in front of a group of oil workers without breaking stride, and was already reaching into her apron pocket for her notepad before they'd even said thank you. They didn't say thank you. She wrote it off. She always did. At the far end of the bar, hunched over a glass of something amber, sat Dale Hutchins, 58 years old, third-generation cattle farmer. The kind of man who had spent his whole life being certain about things, certain about the land, certain about hard work, certain that if you put enough of yourself into the soil, it would give something back. He had calloused hands and a jaw like a fence post and a hat so old it had conformed to the exact shape of his head. He stared into his glass the way people stare into things when they're not really looking at anything at all. His ranch to 1,200 acres his grandfather had homesteaded in 1931 was 17 days away from foreclosure. The bank had been patient, longer than he deserved maybe. But the drought had taken 3 seasons in a row, and the cattle prices had dropped, and then his equipment loan had ballooned, and then his wife had gotten sick. Not terminally, thank God, but sick enough that the medical bills had eaten what little buffer he had left. He hadn't told her how bad it was. He hadn't told anyone. He took a slow sip of bourbon and set the glass down with the gentleness of a man trying not to break something. In the corner booth near the back, half hidden by the shadow cast from a burned-out overhead light that Patty had asked her boss to fix 6 times, sat a young man with a guitar case propped against the wall beside him. Cody Renner was 26, lean in the way people are when they forget to eat because they're too busy being angry about things. He had dark hair that needed cutting, a flannel shirt with a frayed cuff, and the particular expression of someone who has decided the world owes them something and is furious it hasn't paid up. He had a beer in front of him that had gone warm. He hadn't touched it in 40 minutes. Cody had come to Clanton 8 months ago from Nashville, which was itself a kind of defeat he hadn't fully processed. He'd spent 4 years in Tennessee writing songs, playing open mics, knocking on the doors of every producer and label representative he could get within shouting distance of. He was talented, genuinely, objectively talented, in a way that even the people who rejected him acknowledged. His voice had a raw, honest quality that cut through noise. His songwriting was specific and true in the way great country writing always is. rooted in real places and real pain. But talent, he had learned, was not the point. The point was connections, timing, image, luck, and a dozen other variables he couldn't control. After the 4th year, after the 3rd serious relationship had collapsed under the weight of his obsession with making it, after his savings had been completely depleted, he had packed everything into a second-hand Ford F-150 and driven southwest, telling himself it was temporary. He needed to clear his head. He needed distance. 8 months later, he was playing Friday nights at the Dusty Spur for $100 and free drinks, watching his ambitions rust like an abandoned plow. He was writing in a small notebook, scratching out words, rewriting, scratching again, when the door opened. The man who walked in didn't make an entrance. That was the first thing. There was no particular moment of drama, no pause in the music, no heads turning. He simply came through the door the way anyone comes through a door, as if he had a right to be there and wasn't trying to prove it. He was older, somewhere in his mid-70s, though he carried his age well, straight-backed, deliberate in his movements, with the quiet, physical confidence that some men develop over decades of knowing exactly who they are. He wore a plain gray jacket over a simple dark shirt, dark trousers, and a classic Western hat. Not flashy, not a costume, just a hat that fit him like it belonged there. He carried a worn leather guitar case that he set carefully on the floor beside the corner booth, the one diagonal from Cody, still half in shadow. He sat down. He didn't look around the room, didn't scan for recognition, didn't pull out a phone. He just settled into the booth with a long, quiet exhale, like a man setting down something heavy he'd been carrying for a while. Patty appeared at his table within 2 minutes. "Evening," she said, pulling out her notepad. "What can I get you?" "Club soda, please," the man said. His voice was low and unhurried, with the Texas accent so natural it sounded like geography. "And maybe some of those peanuts if you've got them. Coming right up." She scribbled it down without looking up. "You passing through?" "Something like that," he said. He smiled slightly. "Nice place." Patty glanced up then, briefly, with the polite skepticism of someone who has heard a lot of things people say to be polite. She smiled back, the automatic professional smile, and went to get his soda. She didn't recognize him. Neither did anyone else. The man settled into his booth, poured some peanuts into his palm, and looked around the room with the calm, unhurried attention of someone who finds people genuinely interesting. His gaze moved from table to table without fixating, without performing. He watched Dale at the bar with something that might have been recognition, not of the man himself, but of whatever he was carrying. He noticed Cody in the corner, the notebook, the guitar case, the set of the young man's jaw. He ate his peanuts, sipped his club soda. The bar went on around him, indifferent. 40 minutes passed. The haggard song cycled back. 2 of the oil workers left. Dale ordered another bourbon, and then seemed to think better of it, and pushed the glass away. It was Cody who noticed the guitar case first. Not because he recognized it, he didn't, not yet. He noticed it the way musicians notice each other's instruments, with an involuntary professional attention, the way doctors notice limps. The case was old but meticulously maintained, the leather dark and supple in the way of things that have been carefully preserved. He looked at the man holding it and looked away, then looked again. There was something about the man's stillness that was unusual. Most people alone in bars fidgeted, with their phones, their glasses, their napkins. This man was simply present and comfortable in his own space in a way that seemed paradoxically to make him invisible to everyone else. People's eyes slid past him. The room organized itself around his absence. Cody went back to his notebook. He was working on a lyric that kept defeating him, something about inherited loss, about watching a way of life dissolve and not knowing whether to mourn it or release it. He'd been circling the same verse for 3 weeks. The words kept coming out either too clever or too obvious, never quite landing in the true place where good country writing lived. He scratched out another line. Across the room, Dale finally pushed himself off the bar stool. He dropped a folded bill on the bar without counting it. He was past caring about the math tonight, and picked up his hat. He stood for a moment, slightly unsteady. Not from the alcohol exactly, but from the weight of everything he'd been sitting with for months. He looked at nothing in particular. Then he walked toward the back of the bar, heading for the restrooms, and passed within a few feet of the old man's booth. The man looked up as he passed. "Long night," he said, not loudly, not presumptuously. Just a simple observation, extended like a hand. Dale stopped. He looked down at the man, working out whether he knew him, deciding he didn't. "Long few years," Dale said. The man nodded, as if that were a complete and sufficient answer. "Sit down a minute if you want. I'm not much company, but I'm here." Dale looked at the booth, looked toward the restrooms, looked back. He sat down. Patty watched this from behind the bar with mild surprise. Dale Hutchins hadn't voluntarily sat with a stranger in the 17 years she'd worked here. She refilled a glass, kept half an eye on the booth, and went back to her rounds. "Dale Hutchins," Dale said, extending his hand. "Nice to meet you, Dale." The man shook it with a firm, dry grip. "You're not from around here." "No," the man agreed. "But I know places like here. Grew up in them. Where you headed?" "Nowhere in particular tonight." He looked at Dale with a directness that wasn't intrusive, somehow. "You?" Dale laughed, a short, humorless sound. "Home, I suppose. Got a ranch about 12 miles out, or I'd do for another couple weeks." He hadn't meant to say that. It came out before the usual filters caught it. He looked at his hands. "Losing it?" the man asked. No drama in the question, just acknowledgement. "Bank's taking it back." 3 generations. Dale's voice was flat. "My grandfather built the first fence post. My father added the north pasture. I put in the well that never ran dry in 40 years of drought." He paused. "Funny how that works. 40 years, and then 3 bad ones, and it's done." The man was quiet for a moment, then, "What does your wife say?" Dale looked up sharply. "How did you lucky guess? Man with your kind of weight usually isn't carrying it alone." Dale exhaled. "She doesn't know how bad it is. I keep thinking I'll find a way to fix it before I have to tell her. She might surprise you." "She might." Dale rubbed his jaw. "She's already been through enough." The man leaned back against the booth, and for the first time Dale noticed the guitar case leaning against the wall. "You play?" Dale asked, nodding toward it. "Little bit," the man said. From the corner, Cody had stopped pretending to write. He was watching the booth now, though he'd have been hard-pressed to say exactly why. There was something in the old man's manner, gravity, a settled quality, that made him want to keep watching, the way you watch a fire without being able to say what holds you. The speaker above the pool table went quiet. Someone had unplugged it by accident, knocked the cord with a pool cue. There was a brief commotion, some laughter, and then the bar settled into an unusual silence, the kind of silence you only notice when something fills it. The man in the corner booth looked at his guitar case for a long moment. Then he bent down, unlatched it, and lifted out the guitar. It was a beautiful instrument, a classic acoustic, the body a warm honey brown, the wood aged to a richness that only comes with decades. He settled it in his lap with the ease of a man who has done this 10,000 times, adjusted his posture slightly, and rested his right hand across the strings. He played a single chord. It rang through the bar like a bell. Heads turned. Not dramatically, it was a gradual thing, a slow gravitational pull. The pool players lowered their cues. The 2 women at the table near the window looked over. Dale, sitting across from him, went very still. The man played another chord, then a third, and then he began to sing. It was soft at first, barely above a murmur, but the quality of it stopped everything. It was a voice that had been lived in, a voice that had been places. It sat in the low, honest register of real country singing, carrying in it the weight of plains and hard seasons, and things that mattered. Patty stopped mid-step, a tray balanced in one hand, and turned around slowly. Cody Renner's notebook fell closed in his hands. Something moved through the bar, not quite a gasp, not quite a silence, but something between the two, the collective catch of breath that happens when people encounter the real thing and their bodies recognize it before their minds do. The man sang a verse and a chorus, unhurried, his eyes half closed, as if he were singing to himself or to the room in equal measure. When he stopped, the silence lasted a full 3 seconds. Then Dale said in a voice that had gone very quiet, "My God." He was staring at the man across from him with the expression of someone doing arithmetic in their head and arriving at an answer. "That doesn't seem possible, are you?" he started. The man looked at him with a calm, slight smile. "George," he said simply. "George Strait." The name moved through the bar the way fire moves through dry grass, fast and low and unstoppable. It started with Dale, who said it again under his breath as if testing whether it would hold. Then Patty, who had been close enough to hear, turned to the nearest customer, one of the oil workers, and said it in a whisper that carried. Within 90 seconds, every person in the Dusty Spur had heard, and the bar had transformed from a quiet Thursday night into something none of them had words for yet. To understand what George Strait means to people in that part of Texas, you need to understand something about the culture of the place. Country music in the Texas Panhandle isn't entertainment. It's not background noise. It's the sound of the landscape made into something you can hold, the loneliness of flat horizons, the religion of hard work, the language of generations who expressed emotion through melody when they couldn't find the words for it otherwise. George Strait was not simply a famous singer to these people. He was canonical. He was woven into the fabric of their lives the way certain songs are woven in, attached to first dances and funerals and long drives and moments of private grief and joy. He had 60 #1 singles. He had sold over 100 million records. He was, without serious debate, the king of country music, and he was sitting in the back booth of the Dusty Spur in Clanton, Texas, eating peanuts and drinking club soda. The reactions were not uniform, which is what made the next hour so remarkable. One of the oil workers, a barrel-chested man named Rick Dallow, 51, with a handlebar mustache and forearms like bridge cables, simply stood up from his table, walked over, and stood in front of the booth. He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. "Sir," he finally said, "I am from Amarillo. My father drove me 8 hours to see you at the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo in 1993. I was 9 years old. That was the best night of my life until my daughter was born." He paused. "I just needed to say that." George Strait looked at him with complete attention. "Thank you, Rick," he said. "That means a great deal." Rick Dallow nodded once as if a contract had been completed and went back to his table. He sat down, looked at his beer, and very quietly wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. Patty Colwell was having a different experience entirely. She had set her tray down on the bar because her hands had started shaking, not from fear or excitement exactly, but from something harder to name. She was leaning against the bar now, arms crossed over her chest, watching the booth. She was thinking about her mother. Her mother, Donna Colwell, had died 4 years ago of a stroke. Quick and cruel and without warning, there one Tuesday morning, gone by Wednesday evening. Donna had been a country music devotee in the old-fashioned sense. Vinyl records, a battered cassette player in the kitchen, the radio always on. George Strait had been her absolute favorite. When Patty was a child, she could remember her mother dancing in the kitchen to Ace in the Hole, singing along without self-consciousness, laughing at herself when she forgot the words. In the months after her mother died, Patty had found herself driving around late at night listening to George Strait albums on her phone. Not because she'd ever been a particular fan herself, because it made her mother real again for 20 minutes at a time. She stood at the bar and felt the years collapse a little, felt her mother somewhere nearby in the feeling. She didn't go to the booth. Not yet. She wasn't ready. Cody Renner's reaction was the most complicated. He had recognized the voice before he'd recognized the man, his musicians. Ear had assembled the evidence before his skeptical mind would accept it. He was still in his corner booth, guitar case beside him, notebook closed. He was watching George Strait with an expression that cycled between awe and something darker, something that lived closer to resentment. Here was the thing about Cody Renner and George Strait. Cody had grown up on George Strait. His father, Jim Renner, a mechanic from Lubbock, had played nothing but classic country in the house, Haggard, Jones, Winnett, and Strait above all others. Cody had learned to sing along to the chair before he'd learned to ride a bike. When he'd decided at 16 that he was going to be a country musician, the measuring stick in the back of his mind, the impossible, irrational measuring stick, had been George Strait. 4 years in Nashville had not produced a record deal. It had produced a collection of rejection letters, a demolished savings account, and the specific grinding despair of someone who has given everything to a dream and watched it refuse to materialize. And now the man himself was sitting 20 feet away, playing a guitar in a half-empty bar, and the world had simply arranged itself around the irony without apology. Cody picked up his warm beer, set it down, picked it up again. The other customers had begun migrating toward George's booth in ones and twos, respectful, tentative. George seemed to welcome it without performing it. He shook hands, asked names, remembered them, asked follow-up questions. He had the rare quality of people who are genuinely interested in other people, and it read as completely authentic because it was. Dale Hutchins had not moved from across the booth. He sat there watching George interact with the small crowd with an expression of quiet wonder, like a man who has stumbled into something sacred and is trying not to disturb it. After a while, George picked up the guitar again. "You mind if I play a little more?" he said, to no one specifically, and to everyone. Nobody minded. He played "Carrying Your Love With Me" easy and warm, and 3 people in the bar sang along under their breath. He played "Check Yes or No," and a couple in their 60s near the window held hands across the table without seeming to realize they were doing it. And then he stopped between songs, looked toward the corner, and said, "Young man with the guitar case, you play?" Cody looked up, his jaw tightened. "Some," he said, the same word George had used earlier, a deliberate echo, though he didn't know if the old man would catch it. George Strait smiled. He had caught it. "Come sit up here," he said. "I could use the company." The room turned to look at Cody. He felt the weight of it. He felt the pull between the part of himself that wanted this more than he had words for, and the other part, the scarred, defensive part, that had learned to protect itself from wanting things. He picked up his guitar case. He walked to the booth. Up close, George Strait was both exactly what you'd expect and nothing like it. The voice, the face, the bearing, all of it confirmed. But there was also an ordinariness to him, an approachability that made Cody's prepared defenses feel suddenly theatrical. "Cody Renner," he said, sliding into the booth. "George," the man said, and extended his hand. They shook. Cody felt the firmness of it, the unhurried quality. "You were in Nashville," George said. It wasn't a question. Cody stared at him. "How?" "The way you hold the case. The way you've been watching the room tonight." George settled the guitar across his knee. "Nashville boys have a particular way of watching rooms when they come back to Texas, like they're trying to decide if they're relieved or ashamed." Cody said nothing. The accuracy of it was uncomfortable. "What happened?" George asked. It was such a direct question that Cody almost laughed. 4 years, he said. "Nothing happened, that's the answer. You write?" "Yeah." "Sing?" "Yeah." "Play?" Cody opened his case and lifted out his guitar, a Taylor acoustic, well-maintained despite everything, and played a quick run of chords to answer the question. Clean, fluid, confident. George Strait watched his hands. "You're good," he said. Cody exhaled. "I know. That bother you? Knowing you're good and it not being enough? A pause every day." George nodded slowly. He plucked a string, let it ring. "Play me something you wrote. One of the ones you think about when you're sitting alone." Cody looked at him for a long moment. Looked at the room, the customers watching with carefully polite attention. Patty frozen near the bar. Dale leaning forward in the booth. He looked back at George Strait, and he began to play. The song was called Red Dirt and Leaving, and Cody had written it in a motel room outside Nashville on his last night in Tennessee, half drunk and exhausted and strangely peaceful. It was about his father, about watching a man spend his whole life in a place that was never quite big enough for what he felt, and about the son who ran away to find more room, and discovered that more room just meant more space to feel the same things. He sang it simply, without performance, the way you sing something when you've stopped caring about the audience. When it was over, the bar was very quiet. George Strait was looking at him with an expression that was difficult to read. Not quite approval, not quite sadness, something more complex than either. "That's a hell of a song," he said. "Nashville didn't think so." "Nashville is a machine," George said. "Machines don't always know what's real." He paused. "That song is real. I know the difference." Cody stared at him, opened his mouth, closed it. "Don't thank me," George said mildly. "I'm not doing you any favors by telling you the truth. Might be doing you a disservice depending on how you use it." "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means knowing you're good is only the beginning." George ran his thumb across the strings of his own guitar. The rest of it, the years, the naws, the waiting, the rooms that don't notice you, that's not an obstacle to making music. That is making music. Every real song you've got came out of something that didn't go your way. Cody was quiet for a moment. He looked at the neck of his guitar. "I used to believe that," he said. "What changed?" "I got tired." George looked at him steadily. "Yeah," he said. "That's fair." He didn't try to argue it away or motivate him past it. He just acknowledged it. "How old are you?" 26. "I'm telling you right now," George Strait said, "that 26 is not the end of anything." Patty Colwell had been listening from 6 feet away, pretending to refill the nearby condiment station. She wasn't a musician. She didn't have a music career to grieve or ambitions to excavate. But something in Cody's song had reached her in a different place. The part about watching your father live inside a life that was too small for him, that had gone somewhere specific in her chest. She picked up her tray, set it down again. She walked to the booth. "Mr. Strait," she said. Her voice was steadier than she'd expected. "I'm sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to..." She stopped, recalibrated. "My mother passed 4 years ago. She was your biggest fan. She used to dance to Ace in the Hole in our kitchen when I was little." She paused. "I just wanted you to know that. I don't really have a reason beyond that." George looked at her, really looked, with the full attention she'd already seen him give to everyone else. "What was her name?" he asked. "Donna. Donna Colwell." "Tell me about her," he said. Patty blinked. "I'm working," she said, a reflex. George glanced around the nearly empty bar. The customers had resettled at their tables, quiet and content. "I think they can manage for a few minutes," he said. "Sit down, Patty." She sat down, and for the first time in 4 years, she talked about her mother without crying. The bar closed at midnight. Bobby Kessler, the owner, a heavy-set man of 62, who had been in the back office doing inventory when all of this began, had come out 20 minutes ago, taken one long look at what was happening, and quietly decided that inventory could wait indefinitely. He had placed himself at the end of the bar with a glass of sweet tea and the expression of a man who has accidentally wandered into a dream and is afraid to move in case it dissolves. He had not asked anyone to leave. He would not be asking anyone to leave tonight. It was 10:47 p.m., and the 9 remaining people in the Dusty Spur had fallen into a loose, informal gathering around the back booth. Someone had moved a few chairs over. Patty had brought a round of drinks, club soda for George, whatever people wanted. The overhead light above the booth was still out, but someone had found a candle in the back, a squat, waxy thing that Bobby kept for power outages, and set it on the table, and the light it threw was warm and unsteady, and somehow exactly right. George Strait had been playing for the better part of an hour, moving between songs the way a conversation moves between subjects, naturally, following some internal logic that felt both spontaneous and deliberate. He played some of his own, some covers, some things that nobody recognized, and that might have been unfinished songs or might have been improvisations. He played with his eyes half closed, leaning slightly forward. The guitar settled against him with an intimacy that was almost private to watch. Cody sat across from him with his own guitar across his knee, playing along when he could, watching George's hands when he couldn't. He had stopped being aware of the room. He had entered the specific focused state that musicians enter when they're in the presence of something true, a kind of reverential attention that bypasses ego and ambition and just listens. Dale Hutchins had not left. This surprised everyone, including Dale. He was not a man who lingered in bars. He had places to be, or rather, he had a home to return to, which was not the same thing. But something about this particular gathering had made the idea of leaving feel wrong, like stepping out of a church during the sermon. He was nursing a coffee now. Patty had made a pot, and he had been quiet for most of the last hour, listening. At some point, George had stopped playing, and the conversation had opened up, naturally, into something broader. People were talking, really talking, the way people talk when the usual defenses have been suspended by something larger. Rick Dallow, the oil worker from Amarillo, was talking about his father. The couple near the window, Frank and Louise Brennan, who had been married 41 years, were telling a story about the first song they'd danced to, which turned out to be The Chair, which made everyone laugh. George listened to all of it with the same focused attention he'd been giving all evening. At some point, he turned back to Cody. "Play me something else," he said. Cody shook his head slowly. "I played you the best one, then play me the second best." A pause. "The second best one is rough. I haven't finished it." "Even better," George said. Cody looked at him, looked at the room. He felt the old resistance rise, and then, almost without noticing, let it go. He positioned his guitar, thought for a moment, and began to play something slower and more fractured, a melody that kept circling around itself, looking for a resolution it hadn't found yet. He sang, "My grandfather's hands knew the shape of this county before they dug the roads or named the creeks per. I hold the same sky, but I hold it differently, like something borrowed from a man I never got to meet." He stopped. "That's where it breaks down," he said. "The next verse doesn't exist yet." George was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "What were you trying to say with the next verse?" Cody exhaled. "About how you can love a place and also need to leave it. About how those two things aren't opposites. He stopped. "About my dad." Dale Hutchins, across the table, had gone very still. "Your father's still alive?" George asked. "Yeah, still in Lubbock. 32 years in the same garage." Cody turned his pick between his fingers. "He wanted me to take over the business. I left instead." He paused. "We talk on the phone." "It's fine. It's just..." He shook his head. "Fine." "Fine is the saddest word in the language," Frank Brennan said from his table. And several people laughed, and the tension broke a little. But Dale had leaned forward. "That song," he said to Cody, "the part about holding the same sky differently. Your grandfather's hands." He stopped. His voice had a roughness in it that's... He stopped again. "You okay, Dale?" Patty asked from beside the booth. "Yeah." He exhaled slowly. "Yeah, I'm fine." He looked at George. "I'm losing my ranch," he said, louder than he'd said anything all night. Like saying it out loud to the room was a different kind of thing than saying it quietly to a stranger. Banks taking it back. 17 days. The room was quiet. "My grandfather built the first fence post," Dale continued, and his voice was steady, but the effort of keeping it steady was visible. "My father's initials are carved in the gatepost. Been there since 1962. I put them there with him when I was 6. He looked at his hands on the table. 62 years. I'm the one who loses it. Nobody said anything for a moment. George Strait did not offer platitudes. He did not say it would be okay, or that things happen for a reason, or any of the things people say to fill the space where real feeling lives. He simply looked at Dale and said, "Does your wife know?" Dale closed his eyes briefly. "No, why not?" "Because Dale started." stopped, because I don't know how to say it. Because she's been through enough. Because if I say it out loud to her, it becomes completely real. Dale, George said quietly. It's already real. Dale looked at him. Not telling her hasn't kept it from being real. It's just kept you from carrying it together. George paused. I've been around long enough to know that most things, the worst things, the things you can't fix, get a little lighter when someone else knows about them. Not fixed, but lighter. The candle between them flickered. Dale Hutchins, 58 years old, third-generation cattleman. A man who had been raised in a tradition that considered emotional restraint a virtue, bordering on morality, put his elbows on the table and pressed the heels of his hands to his eyes. Nobody looked away. Nobody pretended not to see. Patty put a hand on his shoulder. She left it there. After a long moment, Dale brought his hands down. His eyes were red, but his expression was calmer, as if something had been released. She's going to find a way to blame herself, he said. That's what she does. Let her, George said, and then let her stop, and be there for the stop. It was somewhere around 11:15 that Patty asked the question she'd been holding since she'd sat down. Why are you here? She asked George, not accusingly, genuinely. He looked at her. In Clanton? Oh, in this bar. On a Thursday night, alone. She gestured around the room. I mean, you could be anywhere. George considered this for a moment. I grew up in a town not so different from this one, he said, at Petite, Texas. You know it? A few people nodded. There was a bar there where my father used to take me sometimes when I was real small. Nothing fancy. Just a place where people went to be around other people at the end of the day. He looked at the room, at the worn walls, the longhorn skull, the flickering candle. Every now and then I like to be in a room like that, where people are just living. He paused. It keeps things in the right order in my head. Must be strange, Patty said. Going anywhere and being recognized. It is, he said simply. That's why nights like this don't happen often. He smiled. Usually people have their phones out before I even sit down. There was a small burst of guilty laughter. Almost everyone had their phones in their pockets, and almost everyone had been too absorbed in the experience to reach for them. Rick DeLoe had taken one photo early on, looked at it, and put his phone back without posting it. It was Cody who said, "We should probably not. I'd appreciate that," George said. Not asking anyone, just I'd appreciate it. The understanding moved through the room. Nobody would be posting tonight. Nobody would be tagging locations or sharing videos. Whatever was happening in the Dusty Spur on this Thursday night in October was going to stay. In the Dusty Spur, it was an extraordinary, irrational, completely sincere collective decision. Around 11:30, Cody slipped out the back door for air. He stood in the parking lot behind the bar, in the cold and the dark, and looked up at the Texas sky, which was doing what the Texas sky always does, making everything else feel temporarily smaller. The stars out here were extravagant, unhurried, filling the dark with the indifference of enormous things. He thought about red dirt and leaving. About his father in Lubbock, 32 years in the same garage, hands stained with grease, radio always on. He took out his phone. He looked at his father's name and his contacts. He did not call, not yet. But he held the phone in his hand and thought about calling, which was more than he'd done in months. The back door opened and Patty came out, pulling on her jacket. "You okay?" she asked. Getting there, Cody said. He looked at her. "You?" She tied her jacket belt. "George Strait just told me to stop carrying my mother's death like a debt," she said. "I'm still processing that." Cody almost laughed. He'd say it like that. He said it better. Something about how grieving is one thing, and self-punishment is another. She leaned against the wall. My mother would have been completely unbearable about this, by the way. She would have called every person she'd ever met. She sounds like she was great. She was a disaster, Patty said warmly. The best kind. They stood in the cold for a moment, looking at the sky. "Are you going to stay in Clanton?" Patty asked. Cody thought about it. "I don't know, maybe not forever." He paused. "But I'm not running back to Nashville because things got hard. That's..." He shook his head. That's not a reason to go back. What would be a reason? He looked at the sky, having something to say. Patty looked at him sideways. You have plenty to say, I heard you. Then maybe having someone who wants to listen. She considered this. That's not nothing. No, he agreed. It's not nothing. The door opened again, and Dale appeared, hat in hand, looking for something. His keys, his bearings, hard to say. You both coming back in? He asked. They looked at each other. Yeah, Patty said. We're coming back in. It was nearly midnight when George Strait set the guitar down and picked up his club soda. The bar had settled into something different now, quieter, but in the way that a room gets quiet after the important things have been said, not in the way it gets quiet when people run out of words. Bobby Kessler had locked the front door at some point without anyone noticing, and the small remaining gathering, George, Cody, Patty, Dale, the Brennans, Rick Dallow, and 2 other regulars who had found reasons to stay, occupied the back of the bar in a loose, unhurried circle. The candle had burned lower. The light was amber and intimate. George had been talking about Petit, about growing up the son of a man who loved music but never pursued it as a livelihood, about the particular Texas culture of weekend dances and county fairs and music that was community property, not a product, not a brand, but a shared language that people used to say things they couldn't say otherwise. Country music started as that, he said, a way for working people to tell each other the truth about what their lives were like, the loneliness, the hard work, the love that doesn't look like movies. He ran a thumb along the body of the guitar. Some of it still is that, the best of it. Cody was leaning forward with his elbows on his knees. Nashville's not interested in that anymore, he said. Not really. They want production, image, the 25-year-old with the right look, and Some of that's true, George said. Some of it's always been true. The industry has always been an industry. He looked at Cody. But I'd push back on the idea that it's hopeless. I've watched enough cycles to know it comes back around. The real thing always finds a way through, eventually. He paused. The question is whether you're there when it does. Cody was quiet. Then, I'm not sure I can afford to wait. I'm not talking about waiting, George said. I'm talking about working. Those are different things. Dale, who had been quiet for a while, said he's right about the working part. He looked at Cody. I made the mistake of stopping when things got hard. Every time the drought came, I'd cut back, pull in, wait for it to pass. He exhaled. What I should have done was adapt, find different ways, find help. He turned the coffee cup in his hands. Stubborn independence sounds like a virtue until it isn't. Cody looked at him. What are you going to do? About the ranch? Dale was quiet for a moment. I'm going to tell my wife tonight, he said. That's first. He looked at his hands. After that, I don't know. Maybe there are options I haven't looked at because I was too proud to ask. Government programs. Neighbors. My brother-in-law has been trying to talk to me about a partnership for 2 years and I keep shutting him down. He shook his head. Maybe I should stop shutting people down. Partnership's not losing, George said. No, Dale agreed. I know that now. He looked at George. Strange thing to figure out from a country singer in a bar. George smiled. Strange things happen in bars. Patty had gone behind the counter to make another pot of coffee. She moved through the familiar motions automatically, filter, grounds, water, and found herself doing something she hadn't done in a long time, which was thinking about the future. Not in the anxious way she usually thought about it. The bills, her daughter Amy's school fees, the hole in her sneaker that she kept not replacing, but in an open, wondering way. What did she actually want? Not what did she need, not what was practical, not what did her situation allow, but what did she want? She had been a waitress for 17 years because she'd gotten pregnant at 24 and needed stable income, and the bar offered flexible hours, and she was good at it. All of those things were true. But they had calcified into permanence without her quite deciding that they should. And somewhere along the way she'd stopped asking whether there was something else, because asking felt ungrateful or unrealistic or something. Her mother had spent 30 years as a school secretary. She had told Patty once, near the end, that she'd always wanted to be a nurse. Not as a regret, she'd said. "I'm not saying I regret it. I'm saying I always wondered." Patty didn't want to be saying that at 70. She poured coffee into a row of cups, put them on a tray, and carried them back to the gathering. George Strait took a cup and thanked her. She sat down beside him. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Sure. Do you ever regret it, going into music? I mean, the life that comes with it. The touring, the exposure, she searched for the word, the not being normal." He thought about it. The pause was genuine, not performative. "There are things I missed," he said. "Being present for things you can't get back, time." He looked at the cup. "But regret? No, because the music was never really a choice. It was just what was true about me." He looked at her. "The question isn't whether to do something that's true about you. The question is just what that thing is." Patty looked at him. "I don't know what mine is," she said. "You might know more than you think," George said. "What did you do tonight when everyone was gathered here? What role did you take on automatically?" Patty thought about it. "I made sure everyone had what they needed. I watched for who was struggling. She paused. "I made space for people." "That's a skill," George said. "A real one, not just for a bar." He met her eyes. "What would happen if you applied it somewhere different?" She opened her mouth, closed it, looked away, thinking. Across the room, Louise Brennan had her head on Frank's shoulder. Frank had his arm around her and was talking quietly to Rick Dallow about something, the cattle business, or the oil business, or the way things used to be. One of those conversations that aren't really about what they're about. The room had taken on the quality of a place where people have said the important things, and are now content to simply exist together for a while. Cody had picked up his guitar again. He wasn't playing anything in particular, just chord progressions, working through something, testing shapes. His face had lost the defensive tightness it had carried all evening. He looked younger, or rather, he looked his age. George watched him for a moment. "Can I tell you something?" he said to Cody, "and I want you to really hear it." Cody looked up. "Yeah, you said Nashville didn't want your music, and that might be true. But that song you played, Red Dirt and Leaving, that's a real song. That's not a song that needed Nashville to make it real." He paused. "There's a whole world of people out here who want to hear songs like that. Not on the radio, maybe. Not on the main stage. But in rooms like this one." He gestured around the bar. "You can build a whole life on rooms like this one, if you do it right." Cody was quiet. "I spent years trying to break through a door that didn't want to open," he continued. "Maybe that's not the door, maybe," Cody said. "Not maybe," George said, and there was something different in his voice now, not harder, but clearer. "You know that song is real. You know what it does to people when they hear it. You saw it tonight. Stop asking permission from people who don't understand it." The words landed in the room. Nobody said anything for a moment. Dale set down his coffee cup. He looked at George, and then at Cody, and then at Patty, and then around the bar, at Bobby, still standing quietly at the counter, at the Brennans, at Rick Dallow with his handlebar mustache and his quietly emotional dignity. "This is a strange night," Dale said. "The best ones usually are," Frank Brennan said from across the room, and Louise laughed, and then everyone laughed. And the laughter was real and warm, and the sound of people who have arrived somewhere together. George Strait picked up the guitar one more time. "One more song," he said, "and then I'll let you all get home." The room settled. He played "The Best Day," a song about fathers and children, and time, and the ordinary, miraculous texture of life when you pay attention to it. He sang it quietly, without flourish, and 3 people in the room had their eyes full before the first chorus was done. Cody listened with his guitar on his lap, not playing along this time, just listening. He was thinking about his father in Lubbock, about the garage, about 32 years in the same place, and whether that was a tragedy or a kind of faithfulness, depending on how you looked at it. He made a decision, sitting in that booth. He would call his father tomorrow, not to announce anything, not to resolve anything, just to call, just to say, "I've been thinking about you. I've been thinking about what you gave me. It seemed small. It was small. But it was also," he understood, "the beginning of something." Dale Hutchins sat with his hands around his empty coffee cup and thought about his wife, Carol. Home alone, reading probably, waiting for him to come back from wherever he went when he went to the bar. He thought about what he would say. He thought about the way she would look at him when he told her, the particular expression she had that was simultaneously tender and practical, already thinking about next steps, already figuring out how to move through it together. And he understood that he had been protecting her from something she was more equipped to handle than he was. He would tell her tonight, all of it, the 17 days, the number, the full weight of it. And whatever came after, they would find out together. Patty sat next to George and let the song do what songs do when they're true, reached past her defenses and touched the part of her that was still a child in her, mother's kitchen, watching her mother dance. The grief was there, the same as always, but sitting next to it for the first time in a while was something that felt like gratitude. George finished the song. The last chord rang out and faded, and the bar held its breath for a moment. Then Bobby Kessler from the end of the bar began to clap slowly. One by one, everyone else joined in. It was not the roar of an arena. It was not 10,000 people on their feet. It was 9 people in a small bar at the edge of a small Texas town, applauding in the dark with everything they had. George Strait set the guitar down and smiled. 3 weeks later, the sign outside the Dusty Spur still flickered. The Essen Spur blinked on and off. The cracked asphalt caught the red glow. The pecan orchard smell drifted in from the east. Some things don't change, but some things do. Dale Hutchins told his wife the truth that night. He drove home on Route 9, turned off the truck in the driveway, and sat for a moment in the dark, gathering himself. Then he went inside, and Carol was reading in the kitchen with a cup of tea the way she always was when he came home late, and he sat down across from her at the kitchen table and said, "I need to tell you something." He told her everything, the number, the 17 days, the full shape of the debt. He watched her face as he spoke, watched the worry move through it, then the anger, then the grief, and then, in the way that her face always surprised him, the resolution. She set her book down. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" she asked. "I was trying to protect you." She looked at him with an expression that was both exhausted and deeply fond. "Dale Hutchins," she said, "I have been married to you for 31 years. I don't need protecting. I need to know what we're dealing with." "I know," he said. "I know that now." They sat at the kitchen table until 2 a.m. Carol made a list. She was a list maker, had always been a list maker, which was one of the reasons she'd been keeping the household going while Dale managed to not notice how much was unraveling. She listed the options, the government agricultural relief programs Dale hadn't applied for. The neighbor, Ted Whitmore, who had mentioned twice at church that he'd be interested in a land share arrangement. Her brother Carl's standing offer of a partnership loan at 0 interest. By the time they went to bed, there were 6 options on the list. 3 of them were viable. One of them, Ted Whitmore's land share, was, Carol believed, genuinely workable if Dale could get his pride out of the way long enough to make the call. "Can you do that?" Carol asked in the dark. A long pause. "Yeah," Dale said. "I think I can." He called Ted Whitmore the next morning. Ted picked up on the second ring. "Dale," he said, "I was wondering when you'd call." The negotiations took 2 weeks. They were not easy. Dale's instinct to hold everything close, to protect every acre, to refuse to relinquish any control, kept surfacing and having to be consciously set aside. But Carol was there for every conversation, steady and practical and occasionally fierce in the way that she got fierce when things mattered. On the 16th day, they signed a land share agreement that restructured the debt, kept the Hutchins name on 600 acres of the original 1,200, and gave Ted Whitmore the north pasture his operation had been eyeing for a decade. Dale stood at the gate afterward, looking at his father's initials carved in the post. RH-1962. Still there. Would still be there. The land had changed shape, but the land was still there. He took off his hat and held it to his chest for a moment. Then he put it back on and went to help Carol with dinner. Patty Colwell took a night class. It started with a conversation, a long, circular, uncomfortable conversation she had with herself over several days after that Thursday night. Asking the question George had put to her, what would happen if you applied it somewhere different? The answer she kept arriving at, reluctantly, was healthcare. Not nursing. She'd looked at the requirements and the timeline, and it wasn't realistic right now. But medical assistance. Patient care. There was a community college 40 minutes from Clanton that offered a certified nursing assistant program, 12 weeks, evenings, and weekends. She'd looked at the website 16 times before she applied. She'd called Amy, her daughter, 19 now, studying business administration in Lubbock, and told her she was thinking about it. "Mom," Amy said, "oh my God, why haven't you done this before?" "I was busy. You were scared." A pause. "Probably both. Do it," Amy said. "I'll come home for your graduation." Patty enrolled the following Monday. The class met Tuesday and Thursday evenings. She rearranged her schedule at the bar. Bobby, who had watched everything that happened on that Thursday night from his post at the end of the counter, was more accommodating than she expected. "Take whatever shifts work," he said. "We'll figure it out." She was the oldest student in the program by 6 years. The instructor, a no-nonsense woman named Dr. Paula Krebs, who had 30 years of emergency room experience and absolutely no interest in coddling anyone, looked at Patty's application and said, "You've been doing patient care for 17 years in a bar. You just didn't call it that." Patty laughed. It was the best thing anyone had said to her in a long time. She thought about her mother on the drive home from the first class. Not with the weight she usually carried, not with the debt feeling, the guilt of the grief. Just, "I wish you could see this, Mom. You'd be so annoying about it." She could almost hear Donna Colwell's laugh in the dark of the car. The big, unguarded laugh that filled rooms. She drove home with the window down a little, letting the cold October air in, and she was smiling. Cody Renner called his father on a Friday morning. He sat in the cab of his F-150 in the parking lot of the Dusty Spur. The bar was closed at that hour, the lot empty, and dialed the number he had looked at 100 times without pressing. It rang 3 times. Cody. His father's voice, Jim Renner, graveled and warm, the voice of a man who spent his days around engines and his evenings watching baseball. "Everything okay?" "Yeah, Dad. Everything's fine." He paused. I've been thinking about you. About the garage. About growing up." He looked out the windshield at the flat Texas landscape, the enormous sky. "I wanted to call." A beat of silence. Then, "Well, I'm glad you did." They talked for 45 minutes. They talked about the garage. Jim had taken on an apprentice, a 19-year-old kid from down the street who reminded Jim of Cody at that age, stubborn and quick-handed. They talked about Lubbock, about people from the old neighborhood, and then, carefully, they talked about music. "I heard something the other day," Jim said. "One of those Texas singer-songwriters. Reminded me of the stuff you used to play." Yeah. "Made me think." He paused. "Made me think I don't hear your stuff enough. You send me links sometimes, but I don't always." He stopped. "I should pay more attention." Cody swallowed something. "I'll send you some new stuff," he said. "I've been writing." "Good," Jim said. "That's good, son." When he hung up, Cody sat in the truck for a while. The call had not solved anything structural. His career was still undefined, his future still uncertain, his savings still thin. Nothing about his situation had materially changed. But something had shifted in a place below the material. He took out his notebook and opened it to the second verse of Red Dirt, and, leaving the verse that had defeated him for 3 weeks, and wrote 6 lines in one sitting. They weren't perfect, but they were true. They fit the song the way a last puzzle piece fits, not dramatically, but with the quiet, undeniable click of rightness. He read them back. You find the road I couldn't see from here. You carry what I gave you without knowing. And somewhere in that borrowed sky you wear is the shape of everything worth showing. Red dirt and leaving ain't the end of love. It's just love in a different kind of motion. He stared at the page. Then he picked up his guitar from the passenger seat right there in the parking lot and played the song all the way through for the first time. All 3 verses, the chorus, the bridge. His voice in the empty parking lot, the sky above him, the pecan orchard smell drifting through the open window. When he finished, a crow in the fence line lifted off and crossed the flat distance until it disappeared. He played it again. The weeks that followed were not a transformation in the dramatic sense. There was no record deal, no sudden recognition, no epiphany that rearranged everything overnight. Life in Clanton continued with the ordinary friction and texture of life anywhere, bills and weather and Tuesday afternoons and the small machinery of getting through the week. But things moved differently now. Small things mostly, accumulated things. Cody booked a show in Amarillo, not through a manager or an agent, just by calling a bar he'd played once before and saying he had new material and would they give him a Friday night. They said yes. He drove up alone, set up alone, played to a crowd of 40 or 50 people who had no particular reason to be there for him, and played the full new set including Red Dirt and Leaving and 6 other songs he'd written in the previous 3 months. He recorded a video of Red Dirt and Leaving on his phone afterward. Just him and the guitar in the parking lot, the streetlight above him. No production, no effects. He posted it with a simple caption, "Song I wrote about my dad," for anyone who's been away from something they love. Within a week, it had been shared enough times that a music blog in Austin wrote 3 paragraphs about it. He didn't become famous, but he heard from people, real people, from Texas and Oklahoma and Montana and Georgia, who told him the song meant something to them, who sent him messages in the middle of the night that said things like, "I don't usually do this, but I heard your song and I had to tell someone." He called his father again, played him the recording over the phone. Jim Renner listened to the whole thing without speaking. When it was over, he said, "That's about me, isn't it?" "Yeah, Dad, and about you." "Yeah." A long quiet. "It's a damn good song, Cody." Cody Renner pressed his eyes closed. "Thanks, Dad." Patty Colwell completed her CNA certification on a cold Saturday in February. Amy drove 3 hours from Lubbock and was in the front row of the small ceremony, holding a sign she had made herself that said Donna would be so proud in her grandmother's favorite color, a bright, impractical yellow. Patty saw it from the stage and had to look at the ceiling for a moment. She kept her job at the Dusty Spur 2 nights a week, which felt right. Felt like keeping something she wasn't ready to let go of. She started a part-time position at a care facility in the next town over, working with elderly patients. Her first week, she had a patient, a woman in her late 80s named Margaret Hollis, sharp and difficult and imperious in the way of people who have spent their lives in charge of things, who refused to cooperate with her care routine. Patty sat with her instead of arguing. "What do you want to talk about?" Patty asked. Margaret looked at her suspiciously. "Nobody asks me that. I'm asking." Margaret talked for 40 minutes about her late husband, about a garden she'd kept for 30 years, about the specific, devastating smallness of being old in a world that had moved on to other things. Patty listened to all of it, asked questions, remembered the details. The next day, Margaret cooperated with her care routine without comment. Dr. Krebs, who had heard about the Margaret situation through the facility grapevine, pulled Patty aside in the hallway. "You know what you did there?" she said. "I just listened," Patty said. "You made space," Dr. Krebs said. "That's what this job is, 90% of the time. The medical part is the other 10. She looked at Patty steadily. "You're going to be good at this." Patty drove home that evening on the same Route 9 that had been there all her life. The pecan trees were bare in the winter, skeletal against the last light. The dusty spur sign flickered in the distance. She passed it without stopping. She wasn't working tonight. She drove home and called Amy, and they talked for an hour about nothing important. And it was one of the best conversations she'd had in years. And she went to bed that night in the specific peace of a person who is tired in the right way, tired from good work, from genuine effort, from a day that had meant something. She thought of her mother before she fell asleep. The kitchen, the dancing, Ace in the Hole on the radio. "I see you, Mom," she thought. "I'm figuring it out." Dale Hutchins took Ted Whitmore out to the fence line in January. They stood at the boundary of what was now the shared parcel minus 600 acres of Hutchins land. 600 of Whitmore's, their properties overlapping in the new configuration like two hands clasped together. The winter grass was pale and dry. The sky was the particular pale blue of Texas January, clean and enormous, and offering nothing. Ted was a quiet man, 60 years old, weathered in the same way Dale was weathered, with the kind of patience that comes from working land your whole life. He had been a neighbor for 20 years. They had never been close. They had waved from trucks and nodded at church and exchanged weather opinions at the feed store. That was the extent of it. "Good land," Ted said, looking out over it. "Yeah," Dale agreed. "Your grandfather built good fence." He did. They stood together in the cold for a while, not saying much, which was fine. Men who work land are comfortable with silence. The land said enough. "We're going to do right by it," Ted said eventually. It was a statement, not a question. "We are," Dale said. He meant it. For the first time in 3 years, he meant it without the qualifier, without the shadow of the debt, the weight of the impending loss. The land was still there. Changed in form, but there. His name was still on the gate. His father's initials were in the post. The first green wouldn't come until March, but it would come. George Strait moved through the world the way he always had, touring occasionally, spending time on his ranch in San Antonio, appearing at events and award shows with the comfortable authority of a man who had been who he was for long enough that there was nothing left to prove. He did not tell anyone about the night in Clanton, not in any formal sense. Not to an interviewer or a podcast host or a journalist. He didn't post about it. Didn't mention it in the way that famous people sometimes mention their encounters with ordinary life as evidence of their humanity. It had been a real night in a real place with real people. Some things should stay that way. But sometimes on stage at the end of a long show, he would look out at the faces, the enormous crowds, the stadium lights, the 1,000 raised phones, and he would think about the 9 people in a small bar in Clanton, and the candle burning down, and the way the best day had sounded in that room. And he would think, that's what it's for. That's exactly what it's for. In March, when the first green came back to the Hutchins land, Carol planted a small kitchen garden near the back of the house. She'd been talking about it for 10 years and never had the time or the calm for it. This spring, she had both. She planted tomatoes, peppers, herbs, the simple, patient work of putting things in the ground and waiting for them to come back. Dale watched her from the porch one evening, coffee in hand. The light was the golden late afternoon light of early spring. The land stretched out behind the house in both directions, smaller than it had been. Yes, but green and real, and his in the ways that mattered. He thought about the bar, about the old man with the guitar case, about the things that had been said in that amber candlelight, none of which would have seemed possible on the drive in that evening, about how the worst night of several years had turned into something else entirely. He went inside and helped Carol with dinner, and they talked about the tomatoes, and about the neighbor's new fence, and about something Amy, no, Carol's sister, had said at Easter, and about nothing in particular in the way of people who have been through something hard together and come out still holding hands. He did not know if the ranch would survive the next decade. He did not know what the land prices would do, what the weather would do, what the economy would do. The uncertainty that had been crushing him a few months ago had not disappeared. He had simply stopped being alone inside of it. That, he had learned, made all the difference. On a Friday night in April, Cody Renner played a show at a small venue in Austin. 200 seats, about half full, no opening act. He set up his own gear, sound checked alone, ate a sandwich in the green room that wasn't much more than a storeroom with a couch. He walked out to the stage and looked at the audience, maybe 90 people, 100, young and old. People in cowboy hats, people in sneakers, a few couples, several people alone. He thought about the Dusty Spur, about the night in October, about an old man in a corner booth who had simply picked up a guitar and proved, without argument, without announcement, that the real thing still existed. He stepped up to the microphone. "My name is Cody Renner," he said. "I'm from Lubbock, Texas. I've been living in Clanton for about a year now, and something happened there last fall that changed the way I think about music." He paused. "I'm going to play you some songs. I hope they mean something to you. If they do, tell somebody." He played for 70 minutes. He played Red Dirt and Leaving as the third song, and by the second chorus, 3 people in the front row were singing along, and they had never heard the song before. They had learned it in real time, the way people learn things that are true, fast, and without effort, because the truth has its own gravity. When the show was over and he was loading his gear into the F-150s, stopped him in the parking lot. "That song," the man said, "the Red Dirt one. I need to call my son." "Do it," Cody said. The man nodded and walked away, already pulling out his phone. Cody loaded the last of his gear, closed the tailgate, and stood for a moment in the Austin night. The city glittered around him, lights and noise, and the particular restless energy of a place where everyone is trying to make something. He thought, "I'm still here. I'm still making it. Not the way I planned, but the way it needed to be." He got in the truck, put it in drive, pointed it south toward Clanton, toward the flat land and the enormous sky and the bar with the flickering sign and the people whose lives had briefly, mysteriously, beautifully intersected with his. The radio came on as he pulled onto the highway, George Strait. Cody laughed, a real laugh, open and surprised, and turned it up. The song filled the cab of the truck, and the highway unrolled ahead of him, and the Texas night was wide and dark and full of everything that had ever mattered. He drove. The real thing always finds a way through. The question is whether you're there when it does.